Canada's silent tourism boycott is reshaping the economy of several U.S. towns, leaving some areas struggling to survive. Once thriving destinations flooded with Canadian tourists and their dollars are now facing unexpected economic downturns. From ski resorts to beach towns, local businesses are feeling the heat as Canadian visitors pull back. So which states are suffering the most? And could your local economy be next? Stay with us as we reveal the 10 U.S. states hardest hit by Canada's quiet tourism retreat. 10. Hawaii. Hawaii, once a popular dream destination for Canadian snowbirds, is seeing a decline in its lifeblood. Bookings from Canadian tourists dropped by 14% by mid-February 2025. While that may not sound significant, Hawaii's economy heavily relies on international visitors. Tourism accounts for nearly a third of Hawaii's economy, and the loss of Canadian visitors is sending ripples through local businesses. Hotels in Maui are half empty, tour guides are struggling, and rental condos that once booked out a year in advance are sitting vacant. Can Hawaii survive if Canadian visitors don't return? 9. Texas. Texas, a popular state for Canadian tourists, has quietly lost over $1.4 billion in tourism revenue due to fewer Canadians. The state has seen fewer hotel stays, restaurant meals, and dollars flowing into cities like San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston. The loss is already felt by small businesses and seasonal workers who depend on Canadian tourism. Texas's reliance on Canadian visitors for its warm weather attractions is dwindling. Could this be the beginning of a larger collapse in southern tourism? 8. Maine. Maine's economy has long been tied to Canadian visitors, especially those crossing the border by car. But in 2025, the flow of Canadian tourists dropped sharply. Between February and April, Maine saw a 26% decrease in Canadian visitors. For a state reliant on cross-border tourism, this is more than a warning, it's an alarm. Hotels in Bangor report longer stretches of empty rooms, and towns that used to thrive on Canadian day trippers are cutting staff or closing early. With that spending disappearing, border towns like Calais and Houlton are struggling. How long can Maine survive if the season never starts? 7. Washington. In Washington state, the impact is subtle but noticeable. For years, Canadians from British Columbia have flocked to Washington for day trips, shopping, and Seahawks games. But in 2025, border crossings have dropped significantly. The Peace Arch crossing was down 45%, Pacific Highway dropped 34%, and Suma saw an 11% decline. These numbers translate to empty hotel rooms, canceled dinner reservations, and quieter retail stores. Border towns like Blaine, Linden, and Bellingham are hit hardest. What happens if these numbers keep falling? 6. Michigan. Michigan, especially Detroit, once thrived on Canadian visitors crossing the Ambassador Bridge. But in 2025, visits dropped significantly. Between January and April, Michigan saw a 19% decline in Canadian visits, which means fewer shoppers, casino goers, and overnight guests. Detroit casinos, once dependent on Canadian tourists for 20% of their revenue, are seeing that number shrink. Small towns like Port Huron are also feeling the effects, with fewer Ontario license plates. If the boycott deepens, Michigan could lose more than weekend visitors. It could lose key economic connections. 5. Arizona. Arizona's Sunbelt towns, including Phoenix and Yuma, are feeling the sting as Canadian snowbirds stop visiting. In 2025, Canadian tourism dropped by 22%, with millions of dollars in spending evaporating. Restaurants, golf resorts, and local businesses are noticing fewer Canadian visitors. Canadians were key to Arizona's tourism, particularly during the off-season. Losing them isn't just a temporary setback, it's a structural blow. Political tensions, rising prices, and stricter entry rules are some of the factors keeping Canadians away. What happens when Arizona's most dependable visitors stop coming? 4. New York. New York State is another area feeling the pinch. In 2025, Canadian visitation dropped by 25%, with Western New York seeing the hardest hit. Cities like Buffalo, which thrived on Canadian day trips, now face fewer cars crossing the Peace Bridge, fewer shoppers in outlet malls, and fewer families booking weekend getaways. Even Niagara Falls has seen a decline, with gift shops reporting revenue drops of 15 to 30%. Small towns like Plattsburgh, once a popular stop for Montreal-based travelers, are struggling to fill flights that were once mainly occupied by Canadians. The ripple effect is severe. What happens when Canadian visitors stop coming? 3. Nevada. Nevada, especially Las Vegas, has seen a noticeable decline in Canadian tourism. Canadians made up nearly 10% of international visitors to Nevada, but in 2025, Canadian tourism dropped by 28%. The absence of Canadian visitors means quieter casino floors, unfilled show seats, and empty RV parks. Las Vegas relied heavily on high-spending Canadian tourists. Without them, resorts and smaller industries like wedding chapels and helicopter tours are feeling the strain. This isn't just a bad season. It's a sign of a broader shift. How will Las Vegas adapt? 2. California. California, the crown jewel of Canadian tourism, is also facing a crisis. From Disneyland to Napa Valley, Canadians have flocked to California for years. But in 2025, Canadian arrivals are down by 21%, and some regions like San Diego and Santa Barbara are even worse off. Local businesses, tour operators, and hotels are noticing shorter stays, fewer bookings, and lower spending. Canadians were premium spenders, renting cars, booking tours, and dining in high-end restaurants. Their absence is creating financial gaps. If the trend continues, California's tourism industry may face significant challenges. 1. Florida. Florida, the state most dependent on Canadian tourism, is now seeing a crisis. Canadians contributed over $4 billion annually to Florida's economy, but in 2025, Canadian arrivals dropped by 25%. This is having a widespread effect. Condo rentals are vacant, golf courses are quieter, and even attractions like Disney World are seeing fewer visitors. The reasons behind the slowdown are complex: rising costs, currency struggles, and changing travel trends. But the loss of Canadian visitors is a significant blow. If Florida's most loyal tourists stop coming, how will the state cope?
Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget like and subscribe for the latest updates on global politics.